We're continuing on the study guide for Unit 5/23, Part 2-3, and we are still in Section 4. This next section says, determine how many zeros the equation has, indicate the discriminant and the number of zeros. So remember, the discriminant tells us how many zeros there are, and it's b squared minus 4ac. So for number 5, let's go ahead and list out what a, b, and c are. A is equal to 4, b is equal to negative 8, and c is equal to 4. So in our equation, b squared minus 4ac, we would have negative 8 squared, notice how I put that in parentheses, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is 4. So negative 8 squared is positive 64, minus 4 times 4 times 4, which gives us 64 as well. 64 minus 64 gives us 0. So the discriminant is 0, and that means there is one x-intercept. Anytime we have a discriminant of 0, it means we have just one x-intercept. So that means our parabola would look something like this, or like this. It would only be resting right on the x-axis. All right, our second one, let's label A, B, and C on here. A is negative 4. B is negative 4, and this one's tricky because we have to move that 6 to the other side. So we actually have a negative 6 for the C value. So in our equation, b squared minus 4ac, we have negative 4 squared minus 4 times negative 4 times negative 6. Negative 4 squared gives us the 16, and then negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 6. That's a negative times a negative times a negative. That's going to give us minus 96. So from there, when we do 16 minus 96, we get negative 80. Anytime we have a negative discriminant, that implies that there are no x-intercepts. They're imaginary, which is something you'll learn about in Algebra 2 when you get there in 2 years. No x-intercepts mean the parabola looks like this, or faces down, but it does not touch the x-axis. Our last one, let's go ahead and get our 10x and our 5 to the other side by subtracting them. 10x minus 5. So we'd be left with 2x squared minus 10x minus 5 equals 0. Remember that we can't combine any of those together because they aren't like terms. Our a, b, and c values are 2, negative 10, and negative 5. So if we fill in our discriminant of b squared minus 4ac, we would have negative 10 squared minus 4 times a times c. Negative 10 squared is positive 100. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8 times negative 5 would give us plus 40. So our discriminant is 140, which implies that there are 2 x-intercepts. Anytime you have a positive discriminant, there are 2 x-intercepts. So our parabola might look something like this or like that. Very good. For section 5, we are going to work on the questions here in a real world context, okay? So this first question gives us a lot of information, but we just need to filter through what it's actually asking. So if you have a highlighter right now, it might be a good time to take this out. The equation used is h of t equals 16t squared plus v sub o, that's how you say that, t, plus h sub o, where v sub o is the initial velocity in feet per second, and h sub o is the initial height in feet. So all that means is that's a number, velocity, height. The coefficient 16 represents half the force of gravity. And if you ever get to physics, you'll kind of learn about how the force of gravity affects any projectile object that you throw. Think about when we talked about projectiles, like when we looked at the figure skaters jumping, and y'all had to figure out how high that long jumper ended up getting in the air on one of those skills checks. You've done this before. Choose the equation that models the height in feet of a ball thrown at an initial velocity of 58 feet per second and an initial height of 9 feet. So they just told us that the velocity is 58 and the height is 9. So we know that the negative 16 is going to stay because that represents our force of gravity. So right now C is out. We're looking for an initial velocity of 58. So the number here should be 58. So that means B is out. And then it says our initial height is 9 feet. Well, we have 9 feet here and 4 feet there. So we know D is out and A must be our correct answer. All right. Number 2, determine the equation in factored form from the graph to the right. Let's go ahead and do that. I've listed factored form, and we know that in factored form, A and B represent our zeros. So if we look at our graph, our zeros are -2, 0, and +3, 0. So let's substitute in -2 and +3. So x minus a -2 gives us +2. X minus 3 is our other 0. But now we have to solve for k. So we're going to pick any other point on the parabola and solve for k. So I like to pick points that are really easy to work with. So I'm going to pick this one right here because it is a nice crossing. That point is 2, -8. So instead of f of x, I'm going to put a -8. Okay. And instead of x, I'm going to put a 2. So I have 2 plus 2 times 2 minus 3. -8 is equal to k times 2 plus 2 is 4 times 2 minus 1 is 2 minus 3 is -1. So now I have -8 times -4, or -1 times 4 is -4. So I have -4k. And then we divide both sides by -4. These cancel. -8 divided by -4 gives us +2. So my equation is f of x equals 2, because that's where k was, times x plus 2 times x minus 3. We were able to write our equation in factored form just by substituting in our zeros and another point. Let's move to number 3. Make an equation in vertex form from the table and change it to standard form. So vertex form looks like this. Let's go ahead and look at our table. We can tell from our pattern of increasing, decreasing, that must be our vertex, -1, 11. Pick another point. You can pick any point you want, but I'm going to pick 1, 3, just because I like that the numbers are small. Let's substitute these points in and solve for A. Our f of x is 3. So we have 3 equals A, which we don't know, x, 1, minus h, so we're subtracting a -1, so I'm going to just change that to +1, squared, plus k, and our k value is the 11. Let's take this step by step. 1 plus 1 is 2, so now I have a times 2 squared plus 11. 2 squared is 4, so now I have 4a plus 11. Subtract 11 on both sides, we get -8 equals 4a. Divide by 4 on both sides, we get that -2 is equal to a. Perfect. So let's write our final equation. We have f of x equals -2, because that was our a value, times x plus 1, because remember our vertex has a -1, squared plus 11. Now we're going to transform that equation that we just did into standard form. So this is that process of expand, multiply, times 2, simplify, EMS. So we've got -2 -2 times x plus 1 squared plus 11. So the first item that we're going to take care of is this x plus 1 squared. Let's make an area model off to the side to do that. X plus 1, x plus 1. X times x gives us x squared. X times 1 gives us 1x. 1 times x gives us 1x. And 1 times 1 gives us 1. We're going to add together the middle. So our new equation is now negative 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 11, or plus 11, excuse me. That was the expand part that we just did. Now let's multiply. We are going to multiply negative 2 times all the terms. So negative 2 times x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times 2x is negative 4x. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2 plus 11. That was our multiply. Our second multiply we did was actually here. The last step is simplify. Simplify, so we're going to combine like terms. And these two terms here are the two that are alike because they both don't have an x value. So our final answer is f of x equals negative 2x squared minus 4x, and negative 2 plus 11 gives us positive 9. These last two questions we didn't get a moment to cover, so you're welcome to cross those out. And that is our final question for the study guide. Please, please, please reach out to me on Teams or email if you need more clarification or want to go over anything else.